whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. So, it's been a while. How are you guys? How are you doing? I know, I'm sorry. I've been so good at putting out content every 2-3 days, sometimes daily, that it's been 4 or 5 days, and I felt like seriously like I was neglecting you guys, and that you guys were all going to like dip out on me and I was gonna come and see no subscribers anymore, but you're still here, and thank you so much for that. So let's talk about some interesting coincidences, or I don't know. Let's just talk about what I got going on here for you. First of all, if you're new here, welcome. If you are a current subscriber that keeps coming back, then thank you so much. I truly appreciate all of you so very much. You have no idea. Pass it on to your friends, and let's get a big old family together. How's that sound? Sounds good to me. Okay, so the Grissom Murders. So, how many times can I say so? Probably not as many times as I say oh. Okay, anyway. The Grissom Murders, alright? I call this Grissom Murders the full circle. Okay, so there was some murders that took place that actually inspired the movie Scream. There was also a murder that was inspired by the movie Scream. So we're going to talk about all that in the next 2 videos. So this is part 1 of Grissom Murders, the full circle. So, the murder that inspired the movie. That's what we're going to get into first. And actually it's more like murders, because there were a few. Now, most of us know about the horror movie Scream. It debuted in 1996. I was 16, okay? I actually saw it in the theaters. I was like the same age as the people in Scream, and I was obsessed with Drew Barrymore at the time, so all I had to hear was horror movie and Drew Barrymore, and I was there on opening night, okay? So, this is a movie that has, in fact, become one of the top horror movies of its time, and possibly one of the top horror franchises ever, as it just keeps going and going and going, doesn't it? Most of us know about this movie. I'm sorry, someone is trying to come out here, and I'm about to like flip my shit. No one better come out here. Okay, so the most recent movie, Scream 5, actually just came out, right? It came out January. I didn't see it because, honestly, I'm not a fan of some of the sequels. Number 1 was the best. Like, you couldn't get no better. So I don't know about this new 5th one. But I didn't see it, but it came out, I think, January 14th, 2022. So, and it takes place 25 years later, after the very first one. And much like Halloween, the main character is still miraculously alive, right? But kind of pushed aside to make way for some new faces to start coming up in the movie industry. Because, yeah, I saw the most recent Halloween movies, like Jamie Lee Curtis, still alive and kicking, but they usually give the role to someone playing, younger. So, anyway, so what most people don't know, however, is that the screenwriter of the original Scream movie, which was actually going to be a short story called Scary Movie, which they ended up making that little, what's it called? Doppelganger. Why is doppelganger? They made a doppelganger. What is it called? Parody. Totally different word. Okay. They made a parody called Scary Movie, right, off of it, and they used that in some other movies as well, but anyway, I found that kind of funny. But anyway, okay, so it was going to be called, it was going to be a short called Scary Movie, and Kevin Williamson got the main idea from a true crime story that he happened to catch while house sitting alone one night. So he already knew he wanted to write a movie script. He had already written a few movie scripts. He wanted to do a horror movie script, and so he was already kind of like thinking about it. And after this all happened this one evening, he was like, okay, yeah, I got my plot. Like, I know what I'm going to do. So this TV murder special that he was watching, coupled with being alone in another person's house late at night, gave him the creeps and eventually set his mind racing. He noticed that a window was open in the house, and he became convinced that someone was inside the home with him. He picked up a knife from the kitchen and started looking all around the house. And he actually called a friend, to kind of calm him down. And they ended up talking about how, like, horror movies start out like this. And so, half joking, but scared shitless at the same time, all of this would culminate the script that would become Wes Craven's Scream. So Williamson wrote an 18-page script about a young woman alone in a house being taunted over the phone by a masked killer. In 1995, his agent managed to sell the script to Miramax, and they decided that a short wouldn't be enough. They wanted to make a full-ass movie out of this. They wanted him to keep going. And here we are today. So what murder special had Kevin spooked enough to inspire such a hit franchise? The Gainesville Ripper, aka Danny Harold Rolling. So let's talk about Danny Rolling. Now, I will say that while these murders inspired the movie, what happened to the victims in this Danny Rolling whole entire crime case was horrifying. So, disclaimer, the things that you are about to hear are going to be disturbing. There are also a lot of crime scene photos available. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to be putting them in this or not, but obviously you'll be seeing them any minute now if I did. So I'm not sure, but if I do, I will definitely put up a more of a poof thing up so that you guys know that photos have been added, and to just kind of bear with caution. That's why I'm probably going to leave them out, but you never know what I might do. I might sneak one in at shock value. Okay. So, Danny Rolling was born in 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana, to his 19-year-old mother, Claudia. His father was a decorated police officer named James. Now, James was also a Korean War vet and had some serious violent anger issues, which may have been PTSD, as well as some other inherent mental illness. Basically, the way he acted was that of a psychopath, and that is not putting it lightly at all. He was extremely emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive to his whole entire family, mainly his wife. James was extremely controlling. He was violent. He would fight with Claudia, both, like I said, verbally and physically, right in front of Danny and his younger brother, Kevin. Danny would later recall these years as the time that he developed a multiple personality type disorder in order to deal with the violence in his home. It was sort of a defense mechanism for him. He also recalled attempting to commit harm, to end himself, if you will, many times unsuccessfully. He eventually joined the Air Force to get away from it all, but in 1972, he was dishonorably discharged after being busted with drugs. I shouldn't have said that word. I'm trying really hard to keep everything clean because I don't move through the algorithm quite like I'd like, and I have been told that it's probably my content, but at the same time, like, I'm me, so Okay. Anyway, the possession was for Mary Jane. So nothing major, but it was enough to get him kicked out. Obviously, you are not allowed to be using any illegal substances while in the military. And of course, this ticked his father off something fierce. So he went to live with his grandfather for a time, because his father was so pissed off about the discharge. It was like there was no point to even attempt to be in the home. There would be nothing but fighting and yelling and violence and whatever. So he did manage to gain some stability after this through his church. Now, they were Pentecostal, and a very extreme type of worship can go on in a Pentecostal religion. And they were definitely on the more kind of dramatic end of Pentecostal. Did end up getting married at some point, and he had a daughter. But eventually he drove his wife to divorce him by inflicting basically the same type of violence and abuse that his father had to his mother. Now here's a side note. His grandfather actually killed his grandmother right in front of Danny's father, James. So to say this was like a generational issue that was kind of passed down via like just being in that type of environment would be quite accurate. It is actually, and some people have called it a generational curse. There is actually a show now on Discovery Plus, which I watched the other night, where they kind of go into he had said that at some point he was possessed by a demon named Gemini, and it kind of goes in, that show goes into that, where they actually go to the old home and all sorts of stuff. So check that out if you want. It's really good. Actually, it is really good. But that's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about just the case itself. So, and how did his grandfather take the life of his grandmother? He actually sawed her head off with a kitchen knife right in front of James, which is Danny's dad. So the fact that James was the way he was with his wife, and then Danny with his, it just shows how being in that type of environment can lead to this generational type curse. So after he divorced his wife, he found a woman that looked just like her. Oh my gosh. He found a woman that looked just like her, and he raped her. What is wrong with me, you guys? Oh my gosh, it's 9:30 and I should just go to bed. He arred her violently. He also embarked on a spree of armed robberies until he was finally arrested in Jackson, Georgia in 1979. Now, Danny's time between jail was spent traveling the country and occasionally passing himself on to women. November 4th, 1989, Rowling was fired from his job at a restaurant on the same night that he broke into a home in Shreveport, Louisiana, and murdered 3 members of the Grissom family. It was said that he stalked 24-year-old Julie Grissom and followed her to her home one evening and somehow got inside. He then killed her 55-year-old father, William, and her 8-year-old nephew, Sean, before coming and killing her as well. They were found by a welfare check, and when the police got there, they noticed that Julie had bite marks on her and that she had been laid out in an odd position on the bed with her legs spread. However, I don't think she was RAPED, which is really weird, right? He progresses, though, like they usually do. So, the following May, Danny got into a final fight with his father, where he shot his father James in the head and stomach before fleeing to Kansas and then eventually Florida. His father actually did survive this, but was left blind and deaf in one ear. So sad. 1990, he set up residence in Gainesville, Florida at a campsite that he made in a wooded area behind the University of Florida. And this is just creepy, you guys. Like, the pictures of this, it's just creepy. And to think that he's like literally right behind the college, just, you know, waiting, is just, it's just creepy all the way around. And this is where the town of Gainesville would be turned into complete chaos in just a matter of days. Just as the fall semester had begun, Danny Rolling had also begun his murderous spree. August 24th, he slipped inside the home of two college freshmen, Christina Powell and Sonia Larson, where he brutally stabbed and raped both students. Sonia Larson was found in a peculiar position as well, her feet flat on the floor and her hair laid out behind her on the bed, like kind of like around her head. Christina Powell had been mutilated. August 25th, he got into the home of Santa Fe Community College student Krista Hoyt, who also worked at the county sheriff's office. When she failed to come into work, officers went to her home and they found a horrifying sight. Now this one creeps me out. So just to let you know, this is a little much, okay? It's getting a little graphic. She had been stabbed to death and her body was posed sitting up. Okay? Sitting up on the edge of the bed with her feet on the floor, kind of slumped like this, and her head had been cut off. Okay, so she was decapitated, and then he props her body like that on the edge of the bed, and then he takes her decapitated head and sets it on a shelf to like look at the body. Picture that for a second and like not get creeped out. That, I don't know why, but that like sent chills up my spine when I heard that. I feel like that is so, I couldn't imagine being the one to find her. Now, she did work for the sheriff's office, so when she didn't come into work, they sent police to her house. So of course they may or may not have seen stuff like that before, but I can't imagine what it actually looked like. And I honestly don't want to ever see pictures of that. So like I said, there's a lot of crime scene photos out there. I only have the stomach for a few of them. So if there was this one, I would immediately probably throw up or something. I don't know. So yes, I already said everything about her. So August 27th, he surfaced again, taking the lives of the final two victims in this little mini spree that he had. And these victims were Tracy Pauls and Manuel Thibodeau, both 23 years old. Now, this is what kind of reminds me of Scream, because Manuel Thibodeau was a college football player. So actually when Danny busted in there, Thibodeau put up quite a fight, but he was eventually worn down by Rolling. Manuel was stabbed to death, and Tracy was as well as raped and posed on the floor. The town of Gainesville was in a complete state of panic at this point, and the mayor put a curfew into place. And the campus suspended class until further notice. So again, kind of what they did in Scream. They were terrified, and everyone was wondering who is next. A local task force was assembled to start looking into the situation and trying to calm things down and, get it to where they could open the classes back up again and, get this curfew out of the way. But Danny had already skipped town. So he was like, you know what, it's getting hot in here. So he got his ass out the kitchen. I don't know for how long, but eventually he does make his way back. So authorities zeroed in on a suspect at this point, and they had some tips that were leading him to a kid. He was a man, but he was also a student, though, at the college, Ed Humphrey. So he lived in the same complex as two of the victims, and according to tips from people, he displayed some erratic behavior. And now this photo of him, honestly, it looks like an autopsy photo, does it not? He's just scary looking. He's terrifying looking. And he was brought in after being arrested for hitting his grandmother. And once he was brought in, because there were some tips saying that he could possibly be the one that was committing these murders, they actually held him on a $1 million bond until they could rule him out as a suspect. I mean, talk about unfair, but at the same time, I mean, no one was too concerned that he was in there. So he was said to have severe mental depression, and was taking medication for it. It was eventually found that the DNA of the semen found at the crime scenes was from someone with the blood type B. And Ed Humphrey was type A. So, and in addition to that, there was no physical evidence or any type of evidence linking him in any way to these murders. Police then learned of a murder in Shreveport, Louisiana, that had some similarities as these murders had, such as the weapon, the manner, the positioning of the bodies, and the use of cleansing agents on 3 of the bodies. So initially, when he murdered Julie Grissom, he put vinegar, I guess, on her body to clean her body. I don't know if there was a specific place he put it or whatever. But in addition to using that vinegar, he also ended up using soap on 2 of the other victims. So I don't know if that's him trying to wash his off of them or what, but it obviously was a interesting thing, you know, that and the posing too. So, and around the same time, a woman called Crime Stoppers, after learning about this whole thing, and how maybe these murders were connected, she gave them Danny Rolling's name. I guess her husband was an acquaintance of Danny Rolling, and that her husband said Rolling was like kind of a whacked out guy. He said he was a severely troubled person with a penchant for stabbing people. So I guess he talked a lot about, these vile things, and the husband would go home and tell his wife, man, this dude Danny, like, he's nuts. So once police they looked into him, and once police discovered his rap sheet, they started thinking, you know what, I think he may have robbed a bank, which was the same day Krista was killed. So could they tie these together? So they came across a sus AF man they believed to be Danny Rolling, and they followed him to a campsite that was set up behind the University of Florida. The man ran off, but they stuck around, and they combed through the campsite, and they found all sorts of things. They found a bag of cash from the robbery, a gun, a screwdriver, and a cassette player with a tape inside of it. All of these were taken into evidence, though they did not listen to the tape right away. I don't know why they wouldn't. You have a tape. That would be like the first thing that I would have done, was been like, I want to know what's on this tape. But they didn't.
Hey, writer, what's your name? You're a killer, drifter gone insane.
And for some reason, they did not make the connection to the murders either, because of the gun that they found. They didn't find any knives. They only found a gun. So I'm guessing they must have said, well, if he has a gun, why is he stabbing them? Dude, do your job. Like, people use certain weapons for certain reasons. They use certain ways to end things, people, for certain reasons, right? So, however, if they had listened to the tape right away, they would have known exactly who they were looking for, because Danny Harold Rolling put his full name on the tape.
We listened to the whole tape, and it's Rolling talking and singing.
He talks about killing a deer, how to make sure the blow is fatal.
Aim for the lungs, straight through the rib cage. Either there or the heart, but best thing to do is hit the lungs.
It's eerie because you know what he's talking about.
And amazingly, the singer announces his name.
This man, Danny Harold Rolling.
Right at the beginning. So, by the time police listened to this tape, so they did listen to it sometime after, but the time police listened to the tape, Danny was already in custody for a robbery at a supermarket. Okay. This dude, honestly, all he did was go around robbing and raping people. That's like what he did. So by the time police listened to the tape, Danny was already in custody for robbery at a supermarket. They were then able to collect DNA from him now that he was in custody, which showed his blood type to be B. He eventually confessed, they knew they had their guy. He eventually did confess to the murders of the 5 Gainesville students, but he never ever said that he killed the Grissom family. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection, and while in prison, he wrote to a woman, a journalist, Gail Weathers, anyone? A journalist named Sandra London, and he asked her to help tell his story. He claims that he was possessed by a demon by the name of Gemini that made him commit these murders. And she wrote a book called The Making of a Serial Killer, where she goes into great detail about the abuse that Danny had witnessed and sustained himself, in essence making him a killer. They were also engaged at the time of his death, so they never married, but they were together. And they go into this a little bit in that Discovery Plus documentary, so you may want to check it out. It's actually really interesting. I could have definitely went on with this case because it is very interesting, his relationship with Sandra London, and I could do a whole video just on their relationship.
I recall the day I first saw you. I reached out to say I love you, but it was hard to say. I couldn't touch you. So tell me, baby, what were my words? All my tears run together.
Excuse me, Mr. Rollins.
Down the path you choose
Mr. Rollins.
to follow.
Mr. Rollins.
Tell me, baby, what were my words? All my tears run together. What were my words? All my tears run together, baby, just like rain.
Okay, you get one song and that's it, Mr. Rollins. We're not here so that you can address your friend. We're here.
And just on what she wrote about in the book, as far as him being possessed by a demon, because really, he said that he had to develop multiple personalities to kind of, cope with the abuse that was happening in his house, and maybe it wasn't a multiple personality. So what this, if you believe in that kind of thing, but what this documentary on Discovery Plus is about is kind of like how he maybe the generational curse wasn't just being, violent. It was that the demon was passed down generationally. So I don't know. It looks really interesting. Or it looked really interesting. I saw it. I didn't complete it. I think I had like 10-15 minutes left of it, but it was good from what I did see. But anyway, yeah, check that out. And I will be, well, let's see. Let me tell you the end of the story before I dip out. Like, you can tell I'm off schedule, right? I'm so sorry, you guys. You can totally tell I'm off schedule and I'm like just kind of all over the place. So on October 25th, 2006, Danny Rolling was put to death by lethal injection. Now, he was said to have, and actually there's video of this, he sang this like religious hymn from the time he like walked in all the way through until he finally passed away. And I guess it was just very eerie for the people that were there and very creepy. And Sandra was there. He also left a note confessing to the Grissom murders. So he did confess that that was him, even though everybody knew that it was. I have a feeling because he didn't R her, he didn't RAPE her. So they didn't have DNA. I'm guessing that's what it was. But so he never confessed, but he did confess before he was put to death, and so he did take that responsibility. So anyway, part 2, I will be filming that. I don't know, my battery's about to die, so I don't know if I'm going to film that tonight or tomorrow. I was wanting to do it tonight. But I'm going to start editing this if I don't, and hopefully we will have a nice stream of videos coming out, okay? So I have the Ethan Crumbley preliminary hearing, which is why I'm so behind now, because I was already behind from putting all of this information together, and then the preliminary hearing aired this morning, and I woke up at 8 a.m. and bam, there's my reminder of it, and I was like, okay, now I'm watching a preliminary hearing all day long. So sorry that I got a little off kilter, but I am definitely trying to get my shit together, because my family is kind of getting not happy with me, because I literally spend every single day out in this garage researching things, trying to figure out what the next one to do, trying to figure out how to edit, trying to figure out, you know, the best way to do the A, B, and C, and I'm not spending like any time, you know, quality time inside with my family. So I am definitely trying to figure out a balance. Anyway, I will shut up now. I hope you guys have a great night and day, whatever time it is that you're tuning in. And I will talk to you guys later. Please like, subscribe, and share, comment, whatever. And hopefully you enjoyed what I'm doing here, because this is definitely going into a whole nother awesome little crime. Okay? That was lame. I shouldn't have done that. Alright, cut.